Sometimes we're surprised by the films we watch. A jump scare, a plot twist, a richer meaning in an unexpected fluff piece. But what if the surprise was revealed to you only when you watched another film immediately after it? This is what happened when I watched Jacob's Ladder right after watching Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. These two seemingly polar opposite films, one an absurd family comedy, the other a dark horror, had more in common than you think. In fact, I would go as far as to say that they are the exact same film. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles appears to be a wholesome family comedy. Released in 1987, it's written and directed by John Hughes, stars John Candy as Del O'Griffith and Steve Martin as Neil Page. It's a seemingly simple story of uptight ad exec Neil Page trying to get home in time for Thanksgiving from New York to Chicago, when he bumps up against nothing but delays and drama after Del steals his cab to the airport. Jacob's Ladder was released 3 years later in 1990, starring Tim Robbins as Jacob Singer and Danny Aiello as his chiropractor and friend. It's about a Vietnam War vet, Jacob, who suffers from hallucinations of parallel lives with his wife, Sarah, and his girlfriend, Jezebel. How can these two films be the same? Throughout a series of videos, I will explore the parallels between these two films in depth, so you can see not only how they are identical, but also see the hidden truth that underlies their common story. The one story within everything. The story you are living now. Some of the angles I'll be exploring will be the detail we missed about Neil Page that makes his journey make sense and is what links it to Jacob's Ladder. Both movies show 3 parallel universes, the common symbols in each film, and both characters are on the same journey guided by the same character. Part 1. The detail we missed about Neil Page. When we first watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, we take in the surface level story. Neil Page, an ad exec, commutes to New York City from Chicago and is desperate to make it home to his wife and family for Thanksgiving dinner. He must catch the 6 o'clock flight to be home by 9 as he promised his wife. Neil races against a stranger, played by Kevin Bacon, to catch a taxi, but Kevin gets there first because Neil trips over a trunk left in his path that causes him to fall into traffic right in front of a car that comes to a screeching halt inches from his head. Neil manages to get a taxi, but it's taken from him by a man named Del O'Griffith, whose trunk Neil tripped over. Neil runs into Del at the airport and can't seem to shake him for the duration of his journey home. Every step of the way, Neil is met with resistance, chaos, interruptions, disasters, loss, and annoyances that further delay his journey home. It seems like Neil will never get home, but eventually, 2 days later, Neil reaches Chicago. As Neil is on the elevated train, he reminisces on his trip with Del, who up to this point has annoyed him to the level of near insanity, but now he makes him laugh. He recalls something Del said and feels bad for the guy, so he returns to the train station where Del is still sitting because he has nowhere to go. So Neil takes Del home with him for Thanksgiving, and everybody's happy. I will tell you now, whatever movie you think you see on screen is not the actual movie you are seeing. And this applies to all movies. It doesn't matter what any director or writer says publicly of his or her intentions with the film, because in most cases, they are not aware they are doing it. But all of these details are deliberate because they come from the subconscious. We do nothing. Every movie is telling a hidden story that speaks to your subconscious because it's coming from the subconscious. It's a reminder of who you are, where you are, and why you're here. When you see this story clearly, you are seeing reality clearly, and this is true of your own life. You are also in a movie, not a metaphorical one, a literal one. So what was the detail we all missed? It was so small, so subtle, so nuanced, and yet it was deliberate. Neil is dead. Let's review the opening of the film once again with new eyes. In the beginning of the film, Neil is late for his flight. delayed by his boss who keeps him checking the time because he's trapped in time, fixated on his watch. Neil is not present because he's panicking that he will be late for a very important date. As he leaves, his colleague says, "You'll never make the 6." He suggests that Neil take the 8 o'clock flight instead, but Neil promised he would be home by 9. Neil rushes into traffic, fighting people for a cab, including a race with Kevin Bacon, whom we will revisit later, and trips over Dell's trunk, falls into traffic, and a car breaks inches away from Neil's head. Neil is in the middle of the lane, his head in front of the car, but it quickly cuts to another angle that shows Neil on the outside of the lane, so the car is safe to drive through without hitting him. So what happened here? This is the moment when Neil died. You might think that this is proof that he didn't die, and that is because Neil is caught in a time loop, completely unaware of his own death. So if he is unaware of his death, then we too must be unaware, because this story is told from Neil's point of view. Once you see this, you cannot unsee it, because only when you know that he did in fact die does the story make sense. I'm not making this up. I'm showing you what is actually being revealed that ordinary eyes do not see. This edit, these angles, these shots are not mistakes. They are deliberate to show you only if you have eyes to see. So this moment is the link to Jacob's Ladder, and it reveals that they are in fact the same story. Once this moment was revealed, everything else lined up. Both protagonists die early in the story, and everything that follows doesn't make any sense. Both men are desperately trying to get home, but can't, no matter what they do. Both travel through increasingly surreal, disjointed events that feel out of time and out of place. Both are accompanied by a guide who appears right after death and keeps them moving forward. Both men experience 3 overlapping realities: the outer world, the family world, and the world in between with the guide. Both stories end with a moment of recognition once they remember the truth, and both movies end with the men at home with their families climbing the stairs. I'm now going to take you through the first sequence in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles so I can show you these moments in detail. The first scene shows Neil at work in New York City 2 days before Thanksgiving, and the shot is looking up at a tower, the skyscraper, the tower, but we're also looking up at it through a tree. So the tree is also the tower, and the tower, just like in Westworld, is within you. Then we cut right to a watch, and the watch has 2 pillars, the duality, and also the fact that the first thing that we see in Neil's life is his watch. He's obviously obsessed with time. He is chained by time. Neil takes out an airplane ticket to Chicago O'Hare. So we're going from New York, the crown, the head, to Chicago, the heart. So the boardroom has a similar layout with the table as Severance. And in this instance, this is a coffin because Neil is dead. So the boss is not aware or cognizant of time, doesn't care, doesn't have any regard for anybody's time, doesn't have any regard for the fact that it's almost Thanksgiving. So the boss is not Neil. Somebody else is in charge. This is why he is dead. He's disconnected from his heart, which is why he goes on the journey in the first place. The boss is taking his time. He's literally taking Neil's time. So Neil is keeping track of time. He's pointing at his watch, telling his buddy, I gotta go. He has 3 images of women on his table, and one of them says, Ibis. Ibis, in Egyptian mythology, was a sacred bird representing the god Thoth, who was the god of wisdom, writing, magic, and the moon. But he's also the messenger, Mercury. He's Hermes. He's the one who provides you with the messages that guide you home. So briefly, you can see that the floor is a black and white checkerboard floor because he's in time. He is in the duality, the checkerboard game. His friend says, "What's the point of busting my ass to make it for the 6 when I can just wait and go on the 8 and take my time?" He's not at all worried, whereas Neil is panicking because he's got a deadline to meet. So he's dominated by time, whereas his friend is not. Then he says he left his gloves behind, and then he goes and lists off every single thing that he's going to do because he has to have everything in his head organized or he loses control. He says, "Oh, I don't need them. Can you bring them home for me? If I get in the elevator, I get in the cab, I get on the plane, I get home." So he's thinking ahead. He's not present. He is consumed by time, deadlines, preoccupied with things that he has to do, where he's got to be. He's not living in the present moment. Then his friend John says, "You'll never make the 6, almost in a very haunting but playful kind of way, like he's casting a spell. But the spell's already cast. Neil has cast the spell on himself. So now Neil is outside in the New York City streets, and he encounters Kevin Bacon. But he's not just trying to get a cab. He is entering into competition with Neil over this cab. Why? There are thousands of other people on the streets vying for a cab. Why is he locked eyes on Neil? Because Neil created him. See the devilish look in his eyes? Like, "You're not going to beat me. I'm going to take your cab." Because he doesn't have any regard for Neil's time either. Neil is a micromanager of his time because he feels the lack of time. He even creates scenarios where he doesn't have enough time, and so he feels the added pressure of time. He creates other people who add to the pressure of time. He makes promises to his wife, "I'll be home by 9," to add to his pressure for time because time dominates him. This is lack mentality. He would rather have all this stress and pressure, and everybody does this. So now we've reached the moment where Neil dies. He calls out taxi, and then he trips over the trunk, falls into the road, and then we cut. I'm going to show this to you in slow motion. And so when we cut to the other angle, he's suddenly on the far side of the vehicle, so the car can drive clean through without hitting him. But in the previous angle, he was right in front of the car. And it's obvious that he was right in front of the car. And so to cap off the moment, he sees Kevin Bacon giving him a salute as he takes the cab. If it wasn't for him having to chase after this cab, he wouldn't have tripped over the trunk. So Kevin Bacon is working with Del Griffith. When he turns around and looks at the trunk, it says Del O. Griffith. D-O-G. The dog. We'll get into that another time.